Vanishing vows, the pearl buttons of Olivia Mendez's wedding gown felt like small stones against her trembling fingers. Through the stained glass window of the church preparation room, sunlight scattered across the floor in fragments of ruby and sapphire, a kaleidoscope that seemed to mock the colorless future that awaited her. 15 minutes, Mia, her mother announced, adjusting the veil with practiced hands. Jorge's family is already seated. Remember what this means for us. What it meant was financial security for her struggling family. What it meant was merging with the Delgado restaurant empire. What it meant was everything except love. When the door closed behind her mother, Olivia's reflection stared back at her, a stranger in white. 26 years of dutiful daughter, 26 years of quiet compliance. And now, standing at the precipice of forever, something inside her finally broke. She didn't plan it. One moment she was adjusting her veil, and the next she was slipping. Out the side door, her satin heels abandoned on the church steps, the hem of her dress gathering dust as she ran down the coastal road of Puerto Esperanza. The lighthouse stood like a sentinel at the edge of town, unused for years but still maintained as a historical landmark. Its door, usually locked, swung open at her touch, an invitation, or perhaps a sign. Olivia climbed the spiral staircase, her wedding dress trailing behind her like the ghost of expectations. At the top, the panoramic view of the ocean stretched, endlessly whispering possibilities. She sank to the floor, her elaborate updo coming undone. Dark curls falling around her face as she wept, not from sadness, but from relief. I don't believe this is standard lighthouse protocol. A deep voice startled her. A man stood in the doorway, tall with shoulders that filled the frame. His dark hair was swept back from a face that magazines would describe as distinguished, with eyes that seemed to shift between gray and blue like the sea below. "I'm sorry," Olivia said, quickly wiping her tears. "I shouldn't be here." "Should I, technically?" he replied, a slight smile softening his features. "But I own it, so I make exceptions." He extended a hand. Nathaniel Thorne. The name registered dimly in her mind, the reclusive entrepreneur who'd purchased several historical properties along the coast, the mysterious billionaire who rarely appeared in public. "Olivia," she offered, deliberately omitting her surname. "And I'd steal a wedding dress," he suggested, his eyes kind rather than mocking. "Or are you a very dedicated lighthouse enthusiast?" A laugh escaped her, surprising them both. "I left someone at the altar," she admitted. The words both terrible and freeing. Nathaniel nodded, as if brides fled to his lighthouse every Tuesday. He moved to the window, giving her space rather than crowding her. "Would you like me to leave?" "No," she said, surprising herself again. "But I should go. They'll be looking for me." "Where will you go?" he asked, turning back to her, sunlight illuminating half his face. The question hung between them. She had no answer. Her family would never understand. Jorge's family would be humiliated. There would be nowhere in this small town where she could hide. "I don't know," she whispered. Nathaniel studied her for a long moment. "I have a proposition," he said finally. "It's no strings, no expectations. Just a place to catch your breath while you figure things out." Outside, she could hear distant voices calling her name. The search had begun. "Why would you help me?" Olivia asked, clutching the railing. "Because 15 years ago I almost made the same mistake," he said simply. "And no one was there to offer me a door." In that moment, between her past and an unknown future, Olivia made her choice. Tides of trust. Nathaniel's coastal estate appeared like a mirage as his sleek black Audi wound through the cypress-lined drive. Perched on cliffs overlooking the Pacific, the modernist structure of glass and stone seemed to emerge from the landscape. Itself, Olivia sat silently in the passenger seat, still wearing her wedding dress, though she'd removed the veil. Her phone had buzzed incessantly until she'd finally turned it off, unable to face the barrage of messages from her family, from Jorge, from guests who had witnessed her absence transform from delay to scandal. "We're here," Nathaniel said, his voice gentle as he parked before the house. "My housekeeper, Mrs. Fernandez, has prepared the guest suite. She's discreet and won't ask questions." The enormity of what she'd done crashed over Olivia as she stepped from the car. She'd abandoned everything familiar, her family, her responsibilities, the careful plans that had shaped her life for this uncertain refuge with a man she barely knew. "I can take you back," Nathaniel offered, reading her hesitation. "Or to a hotel, if you prefer." Olivia shook her head. "No, this is all happening so fast." "Time is the one luxury I can offer you," he replied. "Take as much as you need." Mrs. Fernandez, a woman with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes, greeted them at the door. If she was surprised by Olivia's attire, she gave no indication. "Blue room is prepared, Mr. Thorne. I've left some clothes that might fit the senorita." "Thank you, Alina." Nathaniel turned to Olivia. "Make yourself at home. I have some calls to make, but I'll join you for dinner if you feel up to it." The blue room was aptly named. Various shades of azure and turquoise echoed the ocean visible through floor-to-ceiling windows. Olivia stood under the rainfall shower until the hot water washed away her makeup, her tears, the remnants of the life she'd nearly accepted. The borrowed clothes, simple linen pants, and a soft cotton sweater felt like a new skin. By sunset, she found herself on the terrace, watching golden light fade across the water. Nathaniel appeared with 2 glasses of wine, offering one wordlessly. "I should call my mother," Olivia said after a long silence. "She must be worried sick, probably," he agreed. "But sometimes a clean break gives both sides room to think." She studied him, this enigmatic man who'd provided sanctuary without question. "You said you almost made the same mistake." "What happened?" Nathaniel's gaze remained on the horizon. "Family business, family expectations. Charlotte was perfect on paper. All of my father's business partner, Harvard Business School, shared. All the right connections." He took a sip of wine. "I stood at the altar, said the words, signed the papers. We divorced 18 months later. I'm sorry, don't be. It taught me something valuable about living truthfully." He turned to her. "What about Jorge? Did you love him once?" Olivia considered the question. "I wanted to. It's not a bad person, just ... not mine." The admission felt treasonous after years of acquiescence. Over dinner, a simple but exquisite seafood pasta prepared by Mrs. Fernandez. They talked of lighter things. Nathaniel's restoration projects along the coast, Olivia's work teaching, music at the local elementary school, books they'd both read, places they'd both traveled. "Why the lighthouse?" she asked as they shared dessert. "Of all the properties you could buy, ... A smile played at his lips. "Lighthouses fascinate me. They stand alone, facing the worst of storms, existing solely to guide others safely home." He paused. "Plus the view is unparalleled." Later, as Olivia lay in the unfamiliar bed, listening to waves crash against the cliffs below, she realized she hadn't thought about her family's disappointment for hours. Instead, her mind kept returning to Nathaniel, his thoughtfulness, the quiet confidence that required no validation, the sadness that occasionally shadowed his eyes. Morning brought fog rolling over the property, transforming the landscape into something dreamlike. Olivia found Nathaniel in his study, surrounded by architectural plans. "I've decided to stay," she said from the doorway. "Just for a while, until I figure things out. If the offer still stands." He looked up, his expression warming. "It does. I have conditions," she continued, surprising herself with her boldness. "I pay my way. I can help with your restoration projects. I've done historical research before, and this is temporary. I need to stand on my own." Nathaniel considered, her respect evident in his gaze. "Deal," he said simply, extending his hand. When their fingers met, or something electric and unfamiliar passed between them, perhaps, or the first fragile threads of trust beginning to form. Shadows of the past. The Mendez family restaurant buzzed with subdued conversation, locals pretending they weren't discussing the scandal that had rocked their small coastal town. Lena Mendez moved mechanically between tables, her smile fixed, but never reaching her eyes. "Have you heard from her?" Jorge Delgado asked, cornering her near the kitchen. 2 weeks had passed since Olivia had vanished, leaving only a brief text. "I'm safe. I need time. Please don't look for me." "Nothing more than you have," Elena replied stiffly. The alliance between their families had crumbled. Along with the restaurant partnership that would have saved the struggling Mendez establishment, my mother is pressing for a public statement, Jorge said, his voice low, about her mental state. Elena's eyes flashed. Your mother can go to hell, Jorge. My daughter is not crazy. Across town in Nathaniel's sprawling library, Olivia was absorbed. An historical document spread across a massive oak table. She'd thrown herself into researching the lighthouse and other properties Nathaniel was restoring. Finding unexpected purpose in the work, the original architect incorporated elements from his native Portugal, she explained when Nathaniel joined her. See these tile patterns? They're traditional azulejo designs. He leaned over her shoulder, his presence warm and solid. You've found more in 2 weeks than my researchers uncovered in months. Their days had fallen into a comfortable rhythm mornings, spent working separately, afternoons exploring the coastal properties, evenings sharing meals and conversations that stretched into the night. Olivia found herself drawn to Nathaniel's mind, his thoughtfulness, the way he listened as though her words mattered. There's a heritage festival in Carmel this weekend, he mentioned casually. They're featuring coastal architecture. This might be relevant to our research. Our research. The simple phrase sent an unexpected thrill through her. I'd like that, she replied, then hesitated. But I'm not ready to be seen in public. Someone might recognize me.
Understanding.
Crossed his features. We could go incognito.
Baseball caps.
Sunglasses, very low-profile billionaire. His playfulness surprised a laugh from her. You don't seem like the baseball cap type. There's a lot you don't know about me yet, he said, his eyes holding hers a moment too long. That evening, a summer storm lashed the coastline. Thunder rattled the windows as Olivia paced her room, memories surfacing like debris after a flood. Today would have marked 1 month of marriage to Jorge. Her mother's birthday was approaching. The life she'd fled continued without her. She found Nathaniel in the kitchen, making hot chocolate the old-fashioned way, with cinnamon and a hint of chili. Couldn't sleep? He asked, offering her a mug. The storm, she said, though they both knew it wasn't the weather keeping her awake. They settled in the living room.
Al watching lightning
illuminate the churning sea below. Tell me about your family, he said quietly. The words spilled out her father's death 5 years ago. The financial struggles that followed, her mother's desperate plan to save their legacy through Olivia's marriage. And what about yours? She asked when she'd finished. You rarely mention them? Something darkened in his expression. My parents believed success was measured by acquisition money, properties, connections. When I redirected the company toward historical preservation, instead of commercial development, my father called it a waste of the Thorn legacy. His voice remained even, but Olivia sensed the pain beneath. We haven't spoken in 3 years. Impulsively, she reached for his hand. I'm sorry, don't be. Some distances can't be bridged. His fingers tightened around hers. Not everyone gets the luxury of being understood by those who should love them most. The storm crashed around them, but in that moment of shared vulnerability, something shifted. The space between them, once filled with caution and formality, now hummed with unspoken possibility. Olivia, Nathaniel began, his voice dropping to a whisper. Before he could continue, his phone rang, the special tone he'd set for emergencies. The spell broken, he answered with a frown that deepened as he listened. Vandalism at the lighthouse, he explained after hanging up. Someone broke in, spray-painted messages. The security system caught it. What kind of messages? Olivia asked, dread pooling in her stomach. He hesitated before meeting her eyes. Your name and mine. Apparently someone's figured out where you disappeared to. Outside, lightning split the sky, illuminating the sudden shadow that had fallen across their sanctuary. Breaking waves, Olivia stared at the security footage on Nathaniel's laptop, her fingers pressed against her lips. The lighthouse keeper's room was defaced with red spray paint. Olivia plus Thorn, surrounded by crude dollar signs and obscenities. Jorge wouldn't do this, she said, though uncertainty crept into her voice. Probably not Jorge himself, Nathaniel agreed, his expression grim. But word spreads in small towns. The runaway bride and the reclusive billionaire IT makes for compelling gossip. 3 days had passed since the vandalism. It stayed away from the lighthouse, letting Nathaniel's security team handle the cleanup and investigation. The incident had shattered their peaceful cocoon, forcing reality back into their lives. I should go back, Olivia said suddenly. Face my family, explain myself. Nathaniel's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Is that what you want? What I want? ... She trailed off, looking out at the ocean that had become her constant companion these past weeks. What did she want? Not the life she'd fled, certainly. But this borrowed existence, this sanctuary in Nathaniel's world, it wasn't truly hers either. I need to stand on my own, she said finally. I ran away from one life. I can't just hide in another. Something flickered in his eyes, hurt perhaps, or resignation. I'll arrange for a car to take you wherever you need to go, Nathaniel. His phone interrupted again. He answered, listening intently before his expression changed to alarm. When? How bad? A pause. I'm on my way. What's happened? Olivia asked as he ended the call. Fire at the Mendez restaurant, he said, already reaching for his keys. It started in the kitchen about an hour ago. Cold dread washed over her. My mother is safe. Everyone got out. But the damage is extensive. They drove in tense silence, Olivia's mind racing. The restaurant was everything to her family, their livelihood, their heritage. The last piece of her father they had left. Puerto Esperanza's main street was blocked by fire trucks. Red lights pulsing against the pre-dawn sky. Olivia spotted her mother immediately, a small figure wrapped in a shock blanket, staring at the smoldering building. Mama, she called, running toward her. Alina Mendez turned, her exhausted face transforming with shock and then relief. Olivia, Mia, is it really you? They collided in an embrace that contained a month of worry, anger, and love. Sorry, Olivia whispered against her mother's hair. I'm so sorry. You're here now, Elena said simply, pulling back to study her daughter's face. Her gaze shifted to Nathaniel, who had remained a respectful distance away. And you brought him. Before Olivia could explain, Jorge appeared, his face smudged with soot. The fire marshal says it was the old wiring. He reported, then froze at the sight of Olivia. You came back. The complicated tangle of emotions on his face, relief, hurt, lingering affection, made Olivia's heart ache. I heard what happened. I had to come. We're insured, Elena said, returning to practical matters. But not enough. The building is. Historic repairs will cost more than a standard rebuild. Nathaniel stepped forward then. Mrs. Mendez. My company specializes in historical restoration. I'd like to offer our services. Lena's eyes narrowed with suspicion. Why would you help us? Because your daughter has been helping me preserve the history of this coastline, he replied evenly, and because some things are worth saving. Next hours blurred into a flurry of activity meetings with insurance adjusters, preliminary assessments of the damage, arrangements for temporary kitchen space in a nearby hotel. Through it all, Olivia found herself watching Nathaniel navigate the chaos with quiet competence, never once pressuring her or claiming her attention. It was nearing sunset when she finally found a moment alone with him on the restaurant's undamaged patio overlooking the harbor. You didn't have to do all this, she said softly. I know. His eyes met hers, direct and honest. I did it because I could. Not to keep you, Olivia. Never that. Something broke open inside her, the final wall she'd maintained, the last defense. Against what she'd been feeling, what if I want to be kept? The words emerged barely above a whisper. Nathaniel's breath caught. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't want to run anymore. Not from what scares me, and not from what... She stepped closer, her heart pounding. Not from what might be the best thing that's ever happened to me. His hand rose to her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone, with a tenderness that made her eyes sting. I've been falling in love with you since the moment you appeared in my lighthouse, he confessed. But I needed you to find your own way there. When their lips finally met, it felt like the culmination of a journey neither had planned, but both had somehow always been making toward each other. Toward this moment of perfect understanding. Behind them, the damaged restaurant stood as a reminder of what had been lost. For them stretched the endless possibility of what might yet be built. Harbor of Hearts golden afternoon light spilled across the newly restored Mendez restaurant, highlighting the handcrafted tiles and burnished wood that honored its history while embracing its future. 6 months had transformed the fire-damaged building into something more beautiful than before, testament to resilience, to second chances. Olivia adjusted the vintage photograph of her grandparents on the wall, their young faces beaming before the original restaurant opening 60 years ago. Beside it hung a new addition, a watercolor painting of the lighthouse where her life had changed course. "Perfect," Nathaniel said from the doorway, his eyes warm as they moved from the photographs to her face. Their relationship had unfolded gradually, deliberately neither rushing nor hiding. Olivia had moved into a small apartment in town, establishing her independence while helping oversee the restaurant restoration. Nathaniel had opened his normally private world to include her family, earning Elena's grudging respect through actions, rather than words. "Is everything ready?" Olivia asked, smoothing her hands over her simple blue dress. "The guests are arriving." "Your mother is alternating between checking the kitchen and greeting people." He stepped closer, taking her hands. "Are you nervous?" "A little," she admitted. "It's been a year of change." The grand reopening party doubled as their official engagement celebration, a decision that had raised eyebrows among those who still whispered about scandal, but felt right to them both. They had weathered judgment, proven their commitment, and found in each other something neither had expected, a love built on choice rather than obligation. The dining room filled quickly with townsfolk, everyone curious about the renovation. And the couple at its center, Jorge arrived with his new girlfriend, a dentist from the next town over. Their greeting was awkward, but genuine time healing what explanations couldn't. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elena called, tapping a glass for attention. "Welcome to the rebirth of Mendez by the Sea." Her voice carried proud and strong through the room. "My husband built this place with love. My daughter and her, ... She glanced at Nathaniel with a hint of her old skepticism. ... Her fiancé have rebuilt it with the same. Cheers and applause followed. Olivia felt Nathaniel's arm slip around her waist, anchoring her as Elena continued. "When Olivia ran from her wedding last year, I thought it was the worst day of my life." Murmurs rippled through the crowd at her. "Frankness, I was wrong. Sometimes what looks like disaster is actually salvation arriving in disguise." Later, as sunset painted the ocean copper and gold, Olivia and Nathaniel slipped away to the lighthouse. It had become their ritual returning to where they began, marking milestones in the place that had first sheltered their connection. "I have something for you," Nathaniel said as they climbed to the top. A gift to mark the reopening, presented a small wooden box. Inside lay an antique key on a silver chain. "The original lighthouse key," she breathed, recognizing it from her research. "I had it restored." He lifted it gently. Some things are meant to be preserved even as they find new purpose. As he fastened the necklace around her throat, Olivia thought about preservation of buildings, of heritage, of self. She had nearly lost herself trying to preserve her family's legacy through sacrifice. Instead, she'd found a way to honor the past while claiming her future. "In 6 months, I'll walk down an aisle again," she said, turning to face him. "This time, I'll be running toward something, not away." Nathan's smile deepened, reaching his eyes in the way she'd come to treasure. "And I'll be waiting. Grateful that your prayer in this lighthouse somehow became mine as well." They stood together at the railing, watching fishing boats return to the harbor below as darkness gathered. The lighthouse lamp activated automatically, sending its beam across the water, a signal of safe passage, of home found after journeying. In that moment, Olivia understood that sometimes the most profound answers come not in dramatic revelations, but in quiet choices made day after day. Her escape had become an arrival. Her uncertainty had transformed into the surest thing she'd ever known. As if reading her thoughts, Nathaniel pressed a kiss to her temple. "Second chances are rare," he murmured. "Finding someone who sees you truly, sees you as rarer still." Olivia leaned into him, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat against her back. "Then we're the rarest kind of lucky," she replied, the lighthouse beam sweeping over them. In benediction, as the first stars appeared above the endless sea,